everyone, we are here with War 10 against the Brotherhood. Today we'll be taking in Human Torch, Claire, and Mr. Negative. My path assignments are Path 6 in Section 1 and Path 8 in Section 2, and 3 mini-bosses total. Alright, so Path 6 and a middle mini-boss here. Decided to take this Doom with Torch since he is unduped, and therefore there is no worry about gaining a shock when a buff is nullified. So this is going to be a pretty quick, pretty sweet fight where I'm just parry medium, light, medium, baiting out the SP1, retaliating with a medium, light, medium, and just doing that until he goes down. Pre-fight is not going to get used here. I will need it later for an Ebony Maw medium or mini boss. So we're just going to hope that the incinerates and all the damage from that takes care of Doom quickly so that we don't have to worry about getting killed and aggressive fury building up too much. Not going to use any special attacks here. I actually put that science combat boost on for the next fight. So here we are. We hit Nova Flame from having enough incinerates and temperature. He's just melting, so this is not a hard fight since Doom is unduped. If he were duped, it would be a little bit more complicated and scary. You could essentially do the same thing except that you'd shorten your combo and not end with a medium back up to prepare yourself to parry and land the parry. Now, if you miss the parry and you've got a shock on you, chances are he might line that heavy up and smack you across the map, but wasn't a hard fight for me today. Next is this white Magneto on Power Focus 1 Bubble Shield, so I'm going to count the number of blocks through this fight. Since it is Power Focus 1, though, I am not concerned about his power bar. I'm actually uber focused on just laying into him with medium, light, medium. And you can see here it's going pretty well. He's not throwing this SB1 willingly, so I'm not really focused on baiting it. I'm just pulverizing him against the wall, and down he goes. Sorry about that beeping noise earlier. That was a toaster. Moving on to Power Snack. Now, I took this Professor X with Human Torch the last time we faced these guys, which is actually the last time I took Professor X here with Human Torch. And it was kind of a slow fight just because of all the power gain. Ideally, you can probably just lay into him with an invulnerability boost and just let him use SB3 and let that be the end of it. But I decided to use Mr. Negative here. This will obviously be a long fight because I cannot evade counter reliably. Therefore, I cannot just go straight to SB2 with 10 plus dark energy and drop it. So you see there, I built too much light. Not really a big deal, but it is going to slow the fight down. And next, I'm trying to make sure that I build enough light and he doesn't have to be swung at for a miss before I throw an SB1. And I don't know why I didn't just bother dexing an attack and then throwing that. I was kind of worried about getting 10 light and then having to build it up again. So I threw it into his block there, and of course I got punished for it. But some benefits here of using Mr. Negative is just he's a hard counter to Power Snack. He's going to be able to, even with one Petrify, slow the backup recovery down. So really all we have to worry about here is the miss mechanic and the power gain from the global, and then the unblockable specials once he gets enough charges. So as long as you pay attention to that, this is a pretty straightforward fight. Obviously, I'm really focused on making sure that I don't drop an SB2 while the miss mechanic is active and therefore just waste that attempt. I did play with the idea of taking a heavy so that I had more than 10 dark energy when dropping the SB2, but I did not feel like wasting an invulnerability boost here for this fight, as they're starting to get a little scarce, but I want to save them for the last 2 wars as much as I can. So we're just a little over 2 minutes here. Isn't ideal for fight time, especially if we end up tying. But as I said before with Human Torch, it took quite a while for me as well. can hear my dog walking around in the background. Okay, so these last 4 fights I actually took in the morning, and their whole war was done with 51 fights cleared, or sorry, 150 fights cleared and 2 deaths. And we had only, I think we were only at about 134 and 2 deaths as well. And their fight time was pretty ridiculous. It was last time. It's about under, I want to say 8,600, but we'll see it at the end. So I ended up dropping some of the units I had just to get an extra 5% in attack so that I could shorten the time of these fights. Now, suicides wasn't exactly an option, just because of this being path 8. And one of the mini bosses that I'm going to take has safeguards. So there were going to be a lot of specials thrown during that fight. But here you're going to see I was really aggressive about building light, evade counter it early, build just a couple more now that we're at SB2, but basically build it as we're trying to bait out this SB1. And the PS1 is just a good advantage for Mr. Negative if you're trying to get to the SB2 quick to end the fight. So you're going to see here this Manthing, instead of taking it with Claire, which would have taken quite a bit of time, given I would have had to stay in Plagued, he ended up going down in 45 seconds. So the goal that we were averaging was to get all fights under a minute, except for the couple of boss fights that we had, and anything well under a minute was just going to be bonus. So earned 15 seconds there. Here with Venom, I dropped Mystic Dispersion down to 4, just because I wanted to use an invulnerability boost here instead of a advanced power boost. But game plan here is to get to SB2 quickly, drop it. You're going to see I play a lot more aggressive since we're worried about fight time here than I normally do. Normally, if I see a special 1 or something, I won't push him to special 2. I'll try and bait out the special 1. But you're going to see here, I just decide to drop SB2, even if he's got SB2, or even if it's going to push him to SB2. And I deal with blocking the SB2s later. So he's willing to throw it there. This nullifies shield or armor pushed me to SB2, but I decided to wait in case that last hit of that combo didn't put me there. He threw this SB2 quickly since I was well out of range of some basic attacks. So again, keeping in mind that we're trying to keep fight times under a minute, especially for path fights, if it's possible. And this should put him about close. We're creeping up on that minute mark. Parry and decide to end it here instead of bait out. So 54 seconds, so another 4 seconds earned. Now, next is the safeguard mini, and Angela is on it. So I knew there was a chance that this fight would not end under a minute. So, I mean, game plan here, we're still at Mystic Dispersion 4. Just because when we do get the buff immunity up, it's not going to help us much anyways, because buff immunity is not the same as Nullify, Stagger, or Fate Seal. So it's still going to prevent Angela from gaining her buffs, and it's the heal buff we're worried about here. So you'll see with Mystic Dispersion 4 that this actually gives me enough power to get to SB2 before she hits her first regen buff to where it's a worry. I think I nullify right there. And now we're just going to town and incinerate. We're in Hellfire. And it's just rinse and repeat. I'm not really going to bait out specials unless her SB2 doesn't come quick enough. Luckily, the few times she got to SB2, she threw it right away. I'm just going to be a little more aggressive than I normally am with some of these fights, just so that we can save time for some of the fights that'll need it, like the boss fight for RPG. So we're creeping up on a minute here, which isn't a big deal. She's low on health. Here's another SB2. This should put her close. Luckily, she threw that SB2 on the second bait. I thought about throwing the SB1 there, but I just played it safe and basic attacked her. So we went a minute and 13 seconds, so a little over. Moving on to my last fight, which was this Ebony Maw, and this is what I was saving the Nova Flame for. So game plan here is, again, I'm going to play a bit more aggressive. Normally, I would try to bait out SB1, let some of the brute force hit me if he's not going to throw it, but you're going to see here with this fight, I maybe bait it with 1 or 2 times, probably not even 2, just 1. And if he's not throwing it, I'm going back into the medium, light, medium. I just want to nuke his existence so that we don't spend more than a minute in this fight. And it shouldn't be more than a minute. So going well, being aggressive, threw that immediately, didn't even get a dex buff from it. Still going at it, being aggressive. Here's an SB1, don't care, moving on. He's not throwing it, so don't care. Let's go ahead and combo him against the wall. He's at SB2, still not throwing it, don't care. Down he goes. So 35 seconds. So did a great job there cutting the time. Our battle group actually did not die at all, so we got the donut, and we beat their battle group in fight time, which was the goal. And we actually ended up winning this war by about 104 seconds, it looks like. So we did it. We came through. I have not seen us get that low of a fight time. I was super surprised myself. Kind of gives you a question on, hey, are we always boosting max when we take path fights? Whatever. I like to see that because the Brotherhood cleared so fast, it gave us enough time to plan and be super aggressive to try and beat out their fight time, and it worked out for us. So I believe that moved us up into the 4th overall place. We maybe still have a shot at top 3. Who knows? It depends on how the top 4 now, because there are 4 ahead of us. Oh, so we're in the 5th spot. Depends on how their war goes. But really happy we pulled that off. That was really exciting and really stressful to the end. And thanks for watching. I did not take the Mojo boss that you guys saw. I actually deferred it to the Spider-Man 2099 rank 3 that we just got in our battle group. So I have a video of that. If you'd like to watch it, go ahead and keep watching and it'll come up after this. All right, so shout out to the Strands from SSX for being the first to kind of originate using Spider-Man 2099 for boss fights, specifically Mojo. And I'll tell you why in a bit. But this is my alliance mate that is going to go ahead and take it in line. I know him as Stealth in game, I believe. I'm going to butcher this. It's Caenur. But I mean, the benefit here is that the biggest benefit of this fight or matchup is that Spider-Man 2099 takes negative 75% damage, or has a 75% damage resistance against champions who are using True Strike or deal true damage. So you can do max recoil and max suicides for this fight and basically lose no health from that mastery. On top of that, every hit or degen that comes from, if you were to happen to take an SP2 or SP3, that comes from Mojo is going to be reduced by 75%. Add in the fact that he has tremendous burst damage with his SP2, as long as the defender has a bunch of unique debuffs on him. And the fact that he cannot gain buffs, he just extends his debuff timer. And you have the makings of a boss killer, specifically Mojo, or pretty much all mystics. So you don't have to worry about mystic dispersion. You don't have to worry about aggressive power gain. It's strictly just the mystic champion's abilities. And then even then, there's a heavy exhaustion debuff that reduces power gain. So you've probably been watching while I've been talking. He's been doing a bunch of SB2s. The game plan is just to build to SB2, maybe do SB1 before the next SB2 to increase the number of unique debuffs. That way the second SB2 deals a whole bunch more. But you want that wither from the first SB2 so that you can build ruptures 100% of the time with your attacks, and that's just going to increase the damage. Now, he isn't duped, so that those ruptures, when they end, they burst and then they expire or disappear. If he was duped, they have a percent chance of sticking. So it was a no-brainer. It's a much safer fight and faster fight than Mr. Negative. Not as fast as Human Torch, but definitely safer than Human Torch. And as you saw, we won this war. So the fact that this took 2 minutes didn't contribute to us losing. So shout out to Stealth. Shout out to Strands.